Taoiseach Eamon Gilmore, Connacht Cork.
Cancorla, I want to ask the Taoiseach this morning to picture a primary school. Taoiseach, when you look at a primary school in this country today, the first thing that strikes you are the prefabs. The clutter of prefabs in the schoolyard, the prefab extension, sometimes the entire school is a prefab. Now, the Labour Party spokesperson on education, Deputy Rory Quinn, have been asking Minister Hanafin for the past 6 months as to how many prefab buildings there are in Irish primary schools. And she had been telling him that the information was not available in her department. Minister Bat O'Keefe, however, recently wrote to Deputy Quinn, and he has told him that there are 2,235 prefabs in more than 800 primary schools throughout the country. 1,372 of those prefabs are being used for mainstream classes, 552 of them are being used as a resource room, and 72 are in use for special needs education. As we sit here this morning, Taoiseach, there are 40,000 Irish primary school children attending classes in prefab buildings. Buildings that are hard to heat in winter and very difficult to keep cool at this time of the year, and certainly not suitable for children to be attending school in on a long-term basis. Now, I want to ask you, Taoiseach, first of all, do you think it's acceptable that 40,000 Irish children should have to go to school in prefab buildings? Do you think that that's good enough after 10 or 11 years of the best economic years that this country has ever had? And thirdly, would you agree that there's a solution now to this problem? We know that there's a downturn in residential construction. We're being told that by the end of 2009, something like 65,000 jobs will have been lost in residential construction. So there is now a capacity in Irish construction to build schools. And would you take the opportunity now that there is a slowdown in residential construction, which has the same skill set that's required for the building of schools, to accelerate the school building programme, to bring forward proposals and bring forward a plan for the building of the permanent school buildings and permanent schoolrooms and school extensions that schools all over the country have been applying to the department for over the past number of years, to take the 40,000 Irish children who are attending school in prefab buildings out of those buildings and into the kind of school buildings that in this day and age they ought to be attending school in. Cancorla, I asked the Taoiseach a very simple question, and it's one that I would have thought wasn't that hard to answer. I asked him about prefabs in primary schools, and he has now talked to us about primary schools, secondary schools, teachers, hedge schools, anything to hedge away from giving an answer. Taoiseach, there's a very simple problem here. There's 40,000 children who are going to school in prefab buildings. Now, that's not acceptable, I think, to anybody. And, you know, we all understand, yes, there are temporary situations that arise in any school that can be met by having a prefab for a year or 2 years while an extension is being built or whatever. The problem here is that a lot of these prefabs are in effect the permanent school and the permanent classrooms. We don't even know, for example, how long some of these prefabs have been in place. But we know from looking at them in our constituencies that we can see that quite a number of these prefab buildings have been there for a very long period of time. Now, all I'm asking you, Taoiseach, all I'm asking you is, first of all, to acknowledge here to the House, to the children who are attending them, the teachers that have to teach in them, and the parents that have to leave their children there every morning, to acknowledge, first of all, that it's not acceptable to you as head of government that children should have to attend school in prefab buildings. That's the first thing I'm asking you to do. The second thing that I'm asking you to do is to take the opportunity now that there's a downturn in residential construction to accelerate the school building programme. The experience is, if you look at all of these schools, they've all made their applications over time to the Department of Education for the extension or for the new school or for whatever replacement classrooms that they need. And the problem is that when they contact the Department of Education, the phone is dead. They can't get an answer. And it has got worse in recent times, as presumably the department is cutting and paring and doing whatever it is doing in light of the present public finances. And I'm simply putting to you that there is a solution to the problem. The solution is there is now spare capacity in construction, and I'm saying to you, why can't that spare capacity in construction be utilised now to accelerate the school building programme, doing two things simultaneously. One, providing the schools that are going to have to be provided anyway, because at the moment you're pouring money down the drain. The state is paying 35 million a year in rental for some of these temporary buildings. The schools are going to have to be provided anyway. We have to build and provide schools for a growing population, so it's as well to do it now. And secondly, you have the added advantage of doing it now, where you could give at least some little boost to construction and use the spare capacity that's there, and probably, given the state that the construction is in, probably get a better deal in terms of the cost of building these buildings at this stage.
Taoiseach.